Good morning. It is Sunday morning. It is 10:30 a.m. and that means it is time for Sunday Club, which is a weekly Ruby on Rails live stream where each week we take a look at some Rails code and we are building an application together. And the application is about event ticketing or event registration that allows people to sort of buy tickets to an event, like a family fun run or a concert or something like that. And the end goal is that we want to try and talk about group registrations. And we're moving pretty slowly on our application because we only code it an hour or two each week every Sunday morning. And we'd like to get distracted along the way. When I say we, I mean me. Let's dive in. I'm looking down, if you remember, because I've got a new monitor. So to do anything on my screen, I have to look down at where my laptop is now. Below my monitor, I was always able to look off right and left before. Let's dive in. Okay, follow up. Let's get straight into it. Twitter. Here we go. This stream, you wouldn't know it, has a Twitter account because I don't use it too often, and I have actually forgotten to tweet out the fact that we are streaming now, but got 48 followers, pretty wildly successful. I'm zooming in and nothing is happening there. There we go. So follow up from last week. Let's get straight into it. The CSS/JavaScript in Rails 7 questions I was asking in this stream, so last week's stream, are much more succinctly asked and answered in this GitHub issue. And then you click through and it is this GitHub issue. So this was really useful for me because I think that I've said this before, but like the Rails asset pipeline, asset processing stuff has been going through a lot of transitions over multiple versions and years. And it's really helpful to have somewhere to read like, hey, where are we at the moment? Like the major versions sort of provide the chapters in those journeys. And then along the way, new gems get introduced, the sort of like stepping stones, and you can go early or go late, and they'll carry on supporting things that eventually make it that aren't in Rails by default, but you could probably keep a gem for them around. And so this, I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but it's basically like, hey, what's the deal? What should we be doing as a group of developers that want to follow like the framework's ideal way of doing this? How should we be doing it? And these kind of comments here are super useful. So there, we used, if you remember last time, Lawrence in the chat was super helpful and pointed us towards Dart SAS Rails, which is mentioned here, which is processing the SAS outside of the Rails. I can't remember if that was the one that hijacked into the asset pipeline or if that one just was totally separate, but it was super quick. But it processed our primer CSS like super quickly. And so that was great, but we still had our asset pipeline SAS that was being generated as well. And so we wanted to try and get those two things. I was like, oh, can we move everything over? And that didn't seem to be possible. So someone asked about that. There are two ways to use Dart SAS in Rails, either through CSS bundling Rails with Node or with GitHub Rails, Dart SAS Rails, which is what we did. Using the standalone Dart SAS compiler without Node, if you're doing a default Rails 7 app that uses import maps, you should do the latter. So use Dart SAS. That's what we ended up doing last week. We need to update the asset pipeline guide and other documentation to recognize this. So this is from February. So this is fairly recent. It's only June now. So the person who replies kind of touches on where we were at with Primer. So they've used Bootstrap here, but it's basically the same thing. There's CSS and JavaScript components. Is that true for us with the Primer stuff? Maybe not, because all of our primers. Oh yeah, maybe there was JavaScript stuff. With import maps in Rails 7, I seem to be kind of hosed. I don't use that phrase. I think it's an American phrase, but I like it, kind of hosed. I can pin Bootstrap into config import maps RB, but this only pins the JavaScript parts. It provides no CSS solution. Vendoring via bin import maps dash download only copies JS, blah, blah, blah. Like there's a bunch of specific stuff in here. You can read that. In both cases, this means I now have one third-party component being version maintained by two different package managed component mechanisms, and the entire development team had to remember to always update both in lockstep, else things could break. It's not possible to automate this with current mainstream tools as far as I'm aware, and then further down the thread, someone does help, I think, with the automation stuff of it. Bootstrap is directly supported via CSS bundling and Rails, and then they can go back and forth. If you need Node for anything, I'd use it for, this is from DHH. So if you need Node for anything, I'd use it for everything. The benefit of import maps is that it provides a path with no node at all. CS bundling Rails and JS bundling Rails is a great combo to use with Bootstrap, i.e., I take that to mean you're keeping Node around. So all of that goes back to where we ended up. So I'm gonna have to refresh my memory a little bit here. I haven't done anything on this since last week. So we were trying to, we had got it working with Node SAS, I think. Oh man, it's so hot here. It's just sitting here sweating. So that had been working, and I think I scrapped it all, right? Like I think I had it all working, was like, great, yep, we know that works, let's go back. And then the question I was trying to answer was like, could we keep all the primer stuff in asset pipeline? And this was me again reaching down into the node modules directory, which had been added previously. We had, I think, this before. So let's just refresh this. Oh, okay. So this is the one. Yeah. So we've got this one. So node modules is added in config. It's not that config, is it? It's config. Initializes assets. So node modules is added here as a directory that's available in the list of paths that the asset pipeline uses. So because of that, we can reach in and say, right, process primer CSS index. And it's like, hey, I can't do that. And I'm not 100% sure what's happening here, but it won't process it. So what I was then trying was, could we reach down directly and process it as the whole tree, again from the asset pipeline? And that spits out a new error. That's the same error. I thought this one had a different error. Oh, so let's save it, sorry. And close that one. It's not being processed correctly, and I think that's to do with the ordering of the files as they come in. I think. I didn't look into that in a huge amount of detail, but I think that's because require tree doesn't guarantee the order of the files that are in that tree in the order that they're processed. So it's saying, hey, I need a SAS variable, and like it hasn't been loaded yet, which is fair enough. But you sort of don't want to tie the asset pipeline to something in node modules that could change without any awareness. So we ended up with what did we run through? So we had grab a file and via CDN, like that worked because we just chucked it. This is for primer CSS. Well, it's not in the asset pipeline, but just in Rails. So we grabbed a file via CDN. That worked. It was just a line in the head, and it was just a normal CSS link. So if the CDN goes down or if the file's not available, your CSS won't work. Third-party dependency on that. Not in your server, not in your asset pipeline, nothing. Just a total third-party dependency. Fine. We then had modified version. Okay, so because it didn't work when we tried to just use the asset pipeline. So we had a modified version in in the asset pipeline, and we stored it in node modules, and we reached down into there, and we could reach down, and that one didn't work. This one here, and as long as we modify one of the files in there, just to fix this issue. Did I save that? We could fix this issue in there. Then it went away. Like we could just modify those files and that's in there. But that could break really. That's really brittle because the node module stuff could overwrite it. But it did work. We got the file out the other end. The things that I need to put this, like these worked. Oops. And these didn't work. But I think these ones could do. So this one is. And require tree in the node modules directory. What do I mean by this one? There was a version that I actually played around with a little bit after the stream last week, I think. But basically, we were like, okay, well, we could treat Primer, which is in here, as a like a vendor dependency. So we actually pull the files in ourselves and don't try and manage them via a package manager, sorry. So I grabbed all the CSS files over and was trying to just get them to run locally. That one I think you could get to work because you could just modify them as much as you needed. But your upgrade path for the framework would be incredibly hard because any modify you'd have to move them over manually, put it all in Git, all of those things. But I did poke around at that because I was trying to try stuff out. And then modified version of spy button. And then obviously the thing that did work was the dart. That's dot dash s. And this one is the official way to go ahead, but then you are maintaining. So my memory of doing that, so now I've got to go and check the previous stream. But I think this might be the way we have to go forward. Is that the Primer then worked in this, but we still had everything else from our style sheets that we needed, because we needed all of. Why couldn't we move ahead further with this? That went out. Oh, we still had JavaScript stuff, I guess. So we were just separating them out. Like the build pipeline was just then doing JavaScript. Oh, but it was doing the rest of the CSS that was left. Yeah, but I feel like I know that we've done it already, but I feel like this is really the only viable solution if we're trying to move away from Node. And I guess the one that we didn't really dive into, or did we, is the CSS bundling gem that's mentioned in here. CS bundling and JS bundling Rails is a great combo to use with Bootstrap. So I know we have JS bundling installed, right? So getting yeah, JS bundling Rails. I'm getting a bit confused as to what's actually happening. I'm not gonna lie. I've forgotten. Because I did this once a week. I've forgotten which bits are now done where. And a convention to use app assets builds. Okay, so this one put the build in here in the same way that we do for the JavaScript stuff. Is this the one that had the same issue as the asset pipeline? Like it wouldn't actually build the SaaS? Or is this the one we didn't try? I feel like I might be repeating myself. I genuinely had to do the same thing I've already done before. Week is a long time, guys. Week is a long time. Why didn't this one work? If we're already using JS bundling Rails. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I think Sassy was the error that we were getting on the other one. Okay. If you're already relying on Node to process your JavaScript, this gem is the way to go. And I assume that we are relying on Node to manage our JavaScript because we're using JS bundling Rails. That was like 2 weeks ago, so no memory of what that's doing. But that is what is producing these bundles here. And we do that with a little manifest file here that says... Yeah, okay, and then we moved this stuff over. So we took out webpack. So we're still using Node, but not using webpack. Yes, okay, right. I remember all of this. Sorry, I know this is just watching someone remember what they did 2 weeks ago, which if anyone ever watches these things in a row. That's no longer being called, I think, because that's webpack code. That's no longer being called because that's webpack code. Okay, so webpack's gone, but Node isn't, and Node is still doing the build. That's no longer being called. We're only using the controllers directory at the moment, and we haven't got some stuff back in. But that's all we were really doing JavaScript-wise anyway. Okay, great. So yes, we are using Node for our JavaScript. This gem is the way to go, but if you're using the default... Okay, let's try and get this one back up. I think I've already done this, but let's try and get this one back up and running. Just because we want to move forward. And hold on, I've got to try and remember what we're doing here. I think my memory of last stream might also be impaired. I had friends over for a nice barbecue. The weather's good here in the UK at the moment. And I didn't overindulge particularly, but gotta say I'm not feeling my most alert. I didn't overindulge. One did indulge a little. Why not? Summer barbecue. Yeah, okay, let's commit these. See, it'd be interesting because I do have a memory of the performance of Dart SAS being bonkers, like just hitting refresh and it just having worked. So it'd be interesting if we do get this one working, seeing what that would be. So run bin Rails install. Right, so here is where I think I got a bit lost last time because I have read this. Run this. So it's either Tailwind, Bootstrap, Bulma, PostCSS, or SAS. I think it's just SAS. I think that's all we want. This coffee is really helping. Okay. Got stuff happening. Remove app asset style sheets application CSS so build output can take over. App asset styles application's gone. That okay. Right, I sort of remember all of this stuff. Let's go check what has happened here. So the output of running that script, SAS has been added in package.json, And a new build has been added for SaaS stuff. Yes, I do remember seeing this stuff. I can't remember if I did it on stream or was just playing around with it. In our prop file, we have another build. This is what Foreman will run, so this will then add another process to that. Yarn.lock is just having run the update on that. We then removed the line about the style sheets in the link direct from the asset pipeline because now it will only happen within what's in the build. This file using okay, so yeah, I think this is where I got to before. So now we're not using the asset pipeline for this. So what I need to know is how to get all of my other SaaS into here, which I assume will be through here. And then we are... But we already have style sheet link tag. So it's just that we have media all or media none. I don't know what the difference is. This is the new one, so I'm assuming it's this. Okay, so that has run all its install script stuff. And let's restart our server and see what comes out the other end. So I think we should have... What should we have? Cool. No formatted stuff. Okay, great. And then we want to go back to our... This has been removed. So we need to replace all of that in here, which is where our SaaS will actually come from. I think. So in here, can we do... I have to go back to the docs. Oh, also I'm realizing that server is using the wrong... I need to be using that. This has web, CSS, and JS all in one. Okay. Now we're back in the browser. Okay, how does this work? You develop this blah 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 blah. Whenever the bundler detects changes in it, the style sheets in a file, it'll bundle this. Okay. You need to deploy your application, the CSS build task. Okay. Okay. I think this is sort of where I remember getting to before. So let's see if we can import what's global got in it. None of these have anything useful. See if we can do events. I just want to see some CSS that we can actually see if it's working or not. Okay, here we should see stuff working. So here that's gone. But we now have the new entry point, which is app asset style sheets. Just so we have import, events, event layout. Is it? No. Okay, so does any of this change? No, okay. And can we do just some arbitrary SAS in here? Or CSS even? Just turn the background of the page red. Yes, okay, great. So we've got that. But our events layout isn't working. Our events layout isn't working. Do we get a build error? Yes, okay, expected. Okay, got a... Does this need something like that? Oh no, it's actually on the public page, isn't it, where we see that? Okay, great. So this is now being compiled because we have this outline here. Okay, which is from this SAS file here. Okay, great. And we don't need the body to be red. Great. Okay, so we've got some stuff working. So we can also do import. Did we need that in the end? Is that what? Yes, okay, I'm just looking at the wrong page. Okay, it had worked before. So then in here we can do action text, global, and reset. These are all pretty arbitrary, I think. And then that one can actually probably go further down. So in here we now have stuff. Okay, great. So the real trick now is, can we use this? And what error do we get if we can't? Yes, we can. Okay, great. And so the reason we can use that is because in the build script in package.json, this thing here had load path node modules. So let's take that out and just check that theory is correct. So let's take that out and then kill the server and restart it. Yep, so that you can see it's failed to build there. And then this should no longer work for, like, not have row formatting. Okay, great. So then we got a nice big error. Okay, cool. So that theory is correct. So this load path node modules is what's required. And it's got no source maps. Okay. So then if we turn the server back over again. We should get all of that stuff back. And we don't. Did I not save that? Did save it. Back to where it was. Do we need to give it time? Is it still erroring in the server here? Does it need to detect a change in the JavaScript to try and rebuild it? Let's do like save, I'll break, save, it should work. Yeah, it needed a change. Okay, that's something to bear in mind. Okay, and so what is happening up here? Why is this stuff not being formatted correctly? What's missing from there? Where did that styling come from? Okay, it came from in here. Right, this is where we started to get to. So we had placed our SAS files within... I don't know if you could hear my neighbor's dog. We had placed our SAS files next to our component files. So in what we were looking for is sort of that require tree. So what we want is CS bundling Rails require tree. Let's see if anyone's done an equivalent of it. I can see these are purple. I've obviously been looking around here. I'm just reading through some of this stuff. To the test part, I'm just looking at. Oh no, it's BR spec. It did pass when we got the Rails 7 upgrade done, but no. Okay, so what have we broken? And I wonder if we're about to bump into what that Stack Overflow post was trying to indicate. Oh, okay. It's a JavaScript build error. Asset application joke was not declared to be pre-compiled in production. Declare links to your assets in. I thought we'd already got all the tests working with all the JavaScript stuff. Where was it telling me to put that file? App assets config manifest. App assets config manifest. Linktree images, Linktree builds, link application JS. But aren't we linking everything in here and application JS is already in here? Is that not sort of the point? Actually, let me just add it and see if it resolves that issue. So let's grab that. What's that? 29. Let's see. Oh, that's the that's the same SAS error caused by Sassy. Okay, so that is in the docs for CSS. So that, hang on, let me go back a step. So this is the same SAS error that we were getting trying to run it in the front end that we're no longer getting, but we're now getting it only for tests. But there is a mention of that here in the. Did I come off it here? In here, there's a mention of how to avoid Sassy syntax error on existing projects. Some Sass CSS packages use new CSS features that are not supported by the default Sassy Rails integration. Blah blah blah. It'll likely be in the form of a bundle removes Sass Rails. Okay. Try that. Oh, hang on. Someone's at my door. Bear with me. I'll be right back. Give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. Hang on a second. Sorry about that. That was my neighbor dropping something around. Okay, great. So this Rails was removed. Did it actually get removed? Is anything in there? Oh, yeah. So do we get that error on the test? That passes. So can we now remove application.js from the manifest? No. Okay, so that needs to stay, but let's run the rest of the suite. Oops. And see if that fixes all those errors. Were they all basically saying, hey, where's JavaScript? By the looks of it, yes. Okay, cool. That's good that we got rid of that. Let's search for this. CSS bundling Rails. Okay, good. There's resources here on dev.to. This is the key addition. Okay, great. So link. Also, doing this assumes that you've renamed your ES build output file to Java application-ES build.js. So naming gotcha number 1 covers. Have I done that? Application ES build.js. That would be in assets JavaScript. Look. JavaScript application. Okay, so there are 2 solutions here. One is renaming the output of your CSS bundling file, or renaming your app JavaScript application.js, app JavaScript application.js, something else. Okay, I don't think we have that exact problem for number 1, so I think we're good. I think we can do that. Okay, so we've got all our test passing. Okay, so this should work great. Okay, we've got all our test passing. We've got everything working apart from a last part of ours is, can we automatically require SAS files inside /components, app/components? You've got all SAS files in here to automatically get added to. I can't hold all this in my head. I'm already. What's so annoying is that if this wasn't on the stream, this would be like one morning's work, basically. You just stay focused on the same thing till you got to the end of it, write it all up, and you'd be done. But I spend 90 minutes each week trying to remember what I did the week before and then not move forward. Okay. So that none of this is what I'm looking for. What I now need is CSS bundling Rails, import all from directory. Okay. Referencing assets. Okay, I don't think this is it. Okay, these are all higher level. It's the whole directory aspect of it all. Because I could do these individually, I'm assuming. We should probably just check I can do them individually. Okay, let's just try them individually. This is sort of the world I was trying to get away from because it's another step we'd have to remember. So let's take this one as an example. In here, here. Oh, unless we could do... Oh, wait. Okay, can we just do... That's silly. We can just try getting to... These need to be relative? Or could we add... components to our... Okay, well, let's just try this. So let's do... I don't even know if these are relative. Components. Start. Does that work? Can't find style sheet to import. Okay, so... Maybe that's a better search. So CSS bundling. I feel like it's a wildcard. It's for... Maybe it's just CSS bundling is more useful in the search. Okay. Can you use sorry, I've just seen the chat. I just looked out to see the chat. Just getting all the memory slipping. Don't even... I don't know about anyone else who's getting older, as we all are. And I'm not sure this is an age thing, but I think it might be just sort of part of the job. Is that when I'm in it, I can really... Like, you know when you go back to a bug from like a year ago or something like that and you have to do it? It takes a little while for you to ramp up, but you're like, oh, I've got all this, like, it was here. I just needed to access it. It's the ramping up back up to it. Like, there's like a little key somewhere, something, a word or a phrase or something that gets you right back into it. But you have to spend like a couple of hours doing it. And then if you're like doing a day's work, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm back. Let's, you know, this is all in here somewhere. But man, the ramp up time is just getting longer and longer. It's like, and it's also really pointless knowledge that sticks around. Like, I always think there's always like a random CSS thing from Internet Explorer 10 or something. Like, oh, I can remember that perfectly, but I can't remember what I did last week. Right, CSS import wildcard. Can you just use these in default CSS imports? The answer is a firm no. I didn't read the context of the question, so that might be completely wrong. It's probably, it looks like a SAS thing. Wildcards in at import statements for less. Shout out to less. I used to use less of, I think, the first version of Bootstrap. All right. Okay, so we're not able to get that. So let's go to components and then let's grab. Is that side in? No. Okay, so this one's just at the root directory. Check this works then. The avatar icon component. So these went circle. I think we've done this one before. So these went circle before. No, okay. Is that the wrong... hierarchy. So 1 will get you up into assets. Is it 2? Oh, damn it. Oh, no, sorry. In the chat, you're still on BRB screen. Damn it, sorry. I didn't move it over. Sorry, you're a lifesaver in the chat. Sorry, I'm trying to get these SAS files over here. I was just browsing some. I was just browsing some documentation to see if I could see if there were wildcard imports that we could do to get all of the SAS files from components to automatically come in. But so I'm just going to try this one directly for now. Right. So this brown thing circle and this yellow circle, which are user avatars. So when we reach in and get one specifically, they work. So can we wildcard anything? No, cannot file star sheet to import. Can we give it a wildcard with a file extension? No. If we give it a different path, what can we do in build? And I know that this is like first world problems, because in reality, what we would just have to do is add, because presumably what we can do is add a file in here called components. And again, I think we've touched on this before, so we've sort of touched this. So here, we could then take this out, go to this, and here have icon component. I think we actually did this when we implemented the Dart SAS one. I think this was the one that we had working. So now we expect these circles to still be circles. Yep, great. So that works. So yeah, how much work is it to each time we add a new component, add the SAS file to the components list? It's not a huge amount of work, is it? Oops, sorry. Is it a sort of cost of doing business of losing webpack? Because those SAS changes are definitely quicker. Maybe. Yeah, let's go and get a list of them all. I don't know how many there are. So let's do reveal and finder. We can then do within components, find all SAS files. And then you can click on these. If you alt and copy, you get 10 items as path names. They all come over like this. You can then only need what's that doing? I thought that was the that's weird. I don't know what I was doing there. And then we can add import. There we go. So that's a full list. We don't need components. And that has totally not worked. You got an error? Yeah. Oh, did I keep the star? No, I've lost the star. Okay, what's happening here? Let's restart the server. Did it just not like the adding them all at once? So this should go to a nav bar across the top. Okay, so can I just check what I think has happened here? So I went and got all of the SAS files in this directory. I collected the file paths relative to this. So I chopped the front off. Given them each an import statement. So these should all correspond to things. So there should be site nav, navbar component, site nav, navbar component. That should then exist. We're then, I've added them all to components.scss. Right? I then call that here. So that should exist within application.sas.scss, which then should live in here. So there's all the primer stuff, and down the bottom here, we've only got one. Whoa, okay. And does this go back to the you need to change a file to have it rebuild? So if I go into this one and make it like avatar icon, background color red, and then hit it save, will that suddenly rebuild everything? Is this... Where's JavaScript? The CSS. SAS is watching for changes. Ah, is it not watching these files for changes either? It's only watching this file for changes. But even so, why doesn't it build it to start with? Okay, this is super interesting. So do we need to add... No source map, load paths. Load path node modules. How do you add multiple load paths? Do you do this, or are they comma separated? CSS bundling, I think it was there. Dash Rails. Want multiple files. I want multiple files to go into okay, he's done space separated. I'm facing the same error with normal style sheets folder, which I changed to import to relative way it works. However, I don't like the solution. I've tried to add multiple load paths in the SAS command. I mean, this doesn't work, but you could go give it a try changing build source. I also have a new... Okay, this is just people with the same problem, I think. When following the SAS Rails to CSS building Rails upgrade instructions, the default build CSS script fails for ports of style sheets embedded within Ruby gems. I don't have that problem. They're my CSS files. So he's done it with a space. So let's... oh no, what's the... It's app... components. Let's see what happens now if I totally made that. Oh, okay. Lots of stuff happening here. Only 2 positional arguments may be passed. Load path. The path to use when resolving imports may be passed multiple times. Okay, so maybe passed multiple times. Do I do this? This? Oops. Okay. Okay, compiled that into that. Yes, okay, amazing. I don't know why that worked. Fuck. I'm not finding this a joy to work with as a swap for the asset pipeline, I have to say. So Webpack is gone. Great, that takes out some complexity. I totally get why we're moving to a nodeless world in Rails, because frankly, it's more confusing having all this stuff. So that was just such a guess of mine to be like, oh, we need to add the load path to the package rather than. So what can I now remove? So there, that can go. Can I put all of these straight in the application one now? So if I go in, because that is in load path, so I put app assets, style sheets, application. Can these all go in here? And then I can take out the components one. And then this, it doesn't matter that I've taken these out of here because it's no longer being referenced. So does this still work after all of that? Yes. Right. So and this is the same as what was happening with node modules when we were using the asset pipeline. By adding it into the... Okay, I'm going to try and describe what I think has just happened. So by adding this load path app/components, we're doing the equivalent of what we were doing with the asset pipeline version, where inside config app initializers assets, we were adding node modules and app components. So presumably these can now go. Right? Because we're now doing everything through... Okay, so I think those can go because we're not using the pipeline for either of those anymore. Yeah, okay, so there's still toggle. Yeah, okay, so they can go because those are then replaced. So that's what I'm saying. This is an equivalent of this. So these two lines here, equivalent of these two lines here. And because of that, we can then put everything in here without needing to go ... /... components, because this doesn't need to be a relative path anymore because it knows to look inside components. Now, what is really baking my noodle is why didn't it work without that? So if we just go back a step, we had this, which was reaching down into component/components. Component/components had these, which are all relative to itself. And that didn't work. But it should have, I think. Why did we need to reference this file? Because it's reaching down into here, and this file, when it comes to process it, should be like, hey, what have you got? What do you need to import? And it'll be like, oh, I need avatar icon component. Great, okay, cool. And I think didn't it work when we had just that one? Let's go back a step. I want to know why this doesn't work, why that didn't work. So let's take out load path components. Just put node modules in there. Save this. And so now back to where we were and what I think should have worked. So now when we refresh this, we're going to restart our server. Because if it now works, this is all a case of like large changes in the build pipeline aren't consistent. Does this all work? Fuck, it does. So I think we have to kill off what's in this build directory to get a fresh build every time. So I think maybe what was happening is it wasn't actually doing the build. So now let's do a refresh again. It's not in the pipeline. Great. Okay, so we kill the server, restart it. It should replace that file. And everything works. Okay, so when it wasn't working, and we scrolled down to the bottom of this file, none of these were here. And the issue, right, okay, so that's what you've then got to pay attention to, are you double checking that the built output for either CSS or JavaScript has actually changed after your changes? Because we made a bunch of changes that it didn't seem to pick up on. And so here what we're saying is we're not importing app components into the load path. What we're doing instead is reaching down into it and having a file here that references all of these locally, which then is like manual labor to keep them synced. But maybe that's fine. Maybe that's easier to manage cognitively, of being like, hey, the SAS file you need to add them to is right here, because we couldn't quite work out how to get them all automatically imported. And everything's working. Okay, so we're sort of at the end there. We've got spent like 2 full streams on this. Start SAS worked and CSS bundling Rails worked, and that's node based CSS no directory importing, does work with node modules. Okay, 4 different options explored. All 4 working, 2 non-working, one of which I think you could have got to work, but these ones they aren't good ideas for sustainability. That was never really an option because you don't want to rely on an external CDN. Probably that one was never really an option because updating the package would have become a nightmare. You don't want to touch stuff inside your node modules directory. It's just not a good idea unless you absolutely have to. This worked and was lightning fast, so I can definitely see why we want to head in that direction in general. And then this is the node-based one, which is where we are now. So no webpacker, but you do get everything working with node modules. And everything in the asset pipeline. So then we have our builds in here, and everything sort of works. Halfway house. All right. It feels like if I hadn't gone down the primer route, and this is a really, so there's a stream back in the YouTube archive from, can only be a couple of months ago. We really spent a little time talking about primer, which is both has a view component library and a CSS library. And GitHub used them to kind of keep everything in sync with each other. It has a bunch of separate repos. And we talked about like what are the pros and cons of this. And so there's the accessibility gains you get, all the fixes that you get automatically of using a framework, the trade-offs that you make around like the things that it includes, things it doesn't include, what you need to build on top of. And one of them is this idea of like, well, we've only really sort of gone down certain routes because we want to support this CSS framework, which exists in our node modules directory. If we had our own CSS framework that we'd built ourselves, we could do what we wanted because it wouldn't necessarily need to come in via node modules, and like get built because there's pulls from another repo and stuff like that. Like that's a really interesting trade-off as well. Could we be further down the Rails stack if we didn't have to do that? It seems like some of the stuff that Tailwind and Bootstrap got. There seemed to be some stuff that was supporting Dart SAS with Tailwind. We also looked at Tailwind in the YouTube archive, so if people watching this want to go back, that's totally an option. And that is interesting. Like maybe the framework authors themselves would do it, but this has definitely been an interesting example of like what are the trade-offs going down the kind of going step by step. And I guess the last thing I really want to look at is like, okay, so let's say we now have this thing So we want to call this color red important. I'm going to press save and then jump over and press refresh. How quick the update is on this now. Oh, that's not worked. Can't remember what avatar icon is actually doing. Oh, the background color is set explicitly there, so we could add. I just want to see how quick this is. So save and refresh. Refresh. It's totally not. Oh shit. Is that what I'm now losing? I did it because I'm not doing the load path. Do I lose? That's why we needed to add that. Okay, so I think it's no longer watching / components. Right. Okay, that does make a lot of sense as well. Let's just check that as well. So let's put this back in. Restart the server. Is a load path also a watch path? Yes. So now if I change this to blue. Yes, okay, great. So it's now a watch path. Okay, so that's why we can still have it, I think, as we've got it, which is leaving leaving components SAS in here. We don't have to move them up to the top level, although these would also, we could write this exact code in this file and take this line out and it would work the same way. But all we're doing is putting the load path in there for the watch part of CSS bundling. We can take that out. So it's pretty quick. So let's just check that again. Set it as green. Refresh this. No. Refresh this. Yes. It's not as quick as Dart SAS was. This is very unscientific performance monitoring. I'm doing this performance monitoring based on vibe, but holy shit, the Dart SAS one seemed almost instant. I was just making the change, jumping over and pressing refresh, and it was there. This one has that node-based build step, so it needs to do this compilation every time, and I think the node-based one is just not as quick, which I think Lawrence pointed out on the last stream. So there is another trade-off there that we're making. But it's quicker. It is definitely quicker, because with Webpack it was multiple seconds, not just slightly slow. It was very slow. All right, amazing. Let's commit some of this stuff. And tell a bit of a reminder in these as to why we needed to do this. So let's get rid of these two. So this is, let's do these in a row actually. So we want to commit these. This is remove SAS Rails. This was causing errors after the move to CS bundling Rails, and we can actually copy out the error that we were getting. Must have a link to it. No. I just want to copy this section from here so I can copy a link. Oh, come on. I'll type today. From docs. import. Okay, that's committed. Then we want to. We can put all this in and sort of write ourselves a long note as to what's actually happening here. No, let's put these two changes in separately. So let's say. So we need to specify that we've added this. Okay, so this. Why is that not moving? This. Yeah, let's just. I can't be bothered to write all this up. Yeah, if we were being properly diligent, we would probably do this in multiple commits. I think we could probably leave that one out because we want these to be atomic commits, but I don't know. I don't know what that would look like, so I'm not going to worry about it right now. We want to be good Git citizens, but on the stream we're a bit lax with stuff, so we don't worry too much about it. We want to install. That's not really. So initially, we. I really can't type to my fingers. We generated an initial. I do want to put the initial config by running whatever that script was. It was just SAS. However, this commit also includes the following updates to get our SAS rendering correctly. And then I'm just going to write everything up as a bullet point list. Again, we could do this more diligently, but we're just going to go through and do it. So we added in package.json to have watch this directory for changes. That was all we ended up doing it for because we'd already got the build working. We added all our component SAS files manually to components.sas. These had previously been magically included by webpack. Yeah, but we couldn't find a way to get that working, so we're having to import each one. All right, what else did we do? We added that. We added this. To This was as a sort of test failures, which suggested this change. I thought, no, but we thought, it's the other line that's in here. Linktree builds would cover this. That didn't seem to be the case. Okay, cool. What else did we do? I mean, I'm not really sure whether the... Just going to put this in. Use the suggested... add. Okay, that'll do. And save and close that. Those will all get committed. And then in here, do another commit. Did I just comment these out, or did I? Yeah, fine. As we've now installed CSS bundling Rails, this compilation and these directories need to be included. I don't think any of that wording is correct, but I'll get the gist. All right, okay, we don't really need this. This was just a handy list for myself of what worked and what didn't. And that, I think, brings us up to date. So in what must have been hours and hours of labor, we are basically back where we started because everything works. JavaScript works, CSS works. And we are on Rails 7.03. And we are webpackless. And I have learned a bunch, as I hope other people have who end up watching these, about what it is to remove Webpack and where we are in Rails 7 with asset pipeline stuff, with CS bundling JS, JS bundling Rails, CSS bundling Rails, which are the two gems that we now have. And I think that would slightly influence my framework choices and the choices to maybe not use a framework in the future, knowing that the direction we're sort of moving into this like Dart SaaS world, and then the JavaScript bundling being potentially what you want. So you would want to make sure that the framework you use had good Rails support for Rails 7 and 8. So Tailwind seems to be like first party supported, it seems like. Bootstrap may be the same thing. Primer, I'm not so sure. But I think we sort of got away with it because we're using Primer view components. So we only really cared about the CSS parts for that. And then for the JS bundling, we sort of just use Stimulus. So I think we might be able to make the leap to Dart SaaS and maybe get rid of, like, I'm not 1,000,000% sure what's happening with this, whether there is like a just an ES build we could use. Like, is there a world where we don't have this at all? And we can do everything through that pin stuff for ES build? I didn't seem to quite get that far with the import maps stuff. I think there's another step that we could potentially have gone to, but I didn't want to get out of this. I don't want to be doing this anymore because I'm bored of this. This works. We're not using webpack. It's quicker. Is it the quickest? I don't think so, but everything is supported. But it was interesting. It was an interesting journey. It was an interesting journey. And why is that now a different color? What is it telling me about that? Just that file has changes? Okay, it's now gone away. Cool. All right, cool. What's next? What are we doing? So everything has got... So this was our simple form modification change that we made. So we can sign it in. All right, so we have a home page. We have a user area where you can change your password. You can update your email. Pretty cool. If you're an administrator, which you can't get to yet from being a normal user, you can get to your admin area somehow. We'll need to fix that, but that's fine. You can create new events. The fucking rich text editor doesn't work. All right. That's just CSS, right? Because there's still a text box here. That's just CSS. But I added tricks in here and there were no build errors. Okay, let's fix this one. Let's do this one before we go because I want to go. We're going to do, boom, we're going to fix this right away. So, style sheets, action text. Ah, right. This isn't for tricks. This is just my... This is just my additions on top of tricks. So in node modules, there is a tricks thing. No idea. I'm just guessing around now before I Google anything. Tricks, dist, trick CSS. Is this how you do this? Boom. Oops. This one. This one. Yes. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So we can... That was easier than I thought it was going to be. And was that the correct file? Yeah, there's no high level one. Okay. Let's actually just check that works. Let's edit one of these ones. This bit's bold. Save. View the public page. That bit's bold. Amazing. Okay. Just keep it. This app does literally nothing. It is a blank sheet of paper, and maintaining its existence, like just not even developing new features, but just maintaining it fills this stream. Like that is how much people, like clients and like non-engineers, underestimate how much work is involved in maintaining a platform. Of just keeping it still in a modern development environment requires a phenomenal amount of everything, like reading where things are going, what choices you're making along the way, blah blah blah. Like it's wild. All like we blows my mind. And why not? I get, like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's a really hidden thing from whoops. I think that kind of idea of tech debt, and that's not even tech debt. This is just like maintenance, I guess, like foundational work. Yeah, the idea of sort of like trying to explain the journey of the Rails asset pipeline to a client or product manager or someone who doesn't really care, like it's not their problem, and you're like, yeah, I'm just trying to have like the layout just have the layout files included, not even like change them or like have assets show consistently. So I'm gonna need like 2 weeks to do that, and you're like, well, it already works. Like, yeah, but I need to do more work to make it still work in 2 years time. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, that's wild. But it's not. But it must seem wild from the outside. So we want to add Matrix CSS to the new, to updated CSS. I wonder if there's something else you missed. Now we'll figure it out. The test pass. So we should probably put a regression test in to check that these work. Okay, so we can now edit the event. Did I kill my server? So you're signed in as a user. You can administrate your events. Great. You can view the orders. They look ugly, but it's a list of orders. Each order automatically creates one attendee. Like this one kind of goes back to the group registration we're still trying to get to. In a million years, we'll get there. The idea that being that the order represents like the order owner coming through and filling in a bunch of information, but one order can represent lots of attendees. So at the moment, it's only a one-to-one relationship, and an attendee is automatically generated when you create the order using the order owner data. We then have the public page, which represents where you would come to sign up for the event. We have some kind of loose, okay looking sketch files that will be how this looks. But what we focused on here was getting the CSS grid layout working, which was really cool and I enjoyed very much. And then buy the ticket. This is then moving into yet more view component work. So this is a component, this red line is our single column component. This area at the top is our event summary component, and we can then reuse these as we move forward. All of our navbar and things like our toggles and stuff is already reusing components. So then we can, I don't know how that's set up here. Create an order, and we get our confirmation page and everything like that. So we've got a bit more formatting to do, but I think we've sort of got all of our ingredients to, I think the next part of this is possibly to try and finishing off the formatting and get it out the door, and try and run like a little mini, like get it on Heroku, or I don't know what's going on with Heroku at the moment, but try and get it up onto Render or one of those things and get it out the door. I'm going to wrap up there because we did loads of asset pipeline stuff, and we've laid out what we're going to do next. So thank you so much. Thank you very much to Roscoe Cat in the chat, who I realized I hadn't put the BRB sign back off, which I really appreciate. The heads up on that. Thank you to everyone. I still haven't followed up with Sam about pairing, more on the channel, but I will do that as well. Have wonderful weeks. I will see everybody next Sunday, 10:30 a.m. UK time. And I hope you have some fun Rails stuff that you get to do in the meantime. Have a great time. Bye-bye.